we can start with some housekeeping. There is a housekeeping slide about to appear, but anybody who has their microphone up that is not muted, could you mute it? Sometimes it's helpful to also turn off your video camera until you get to the point where you might want to ask a question. So thanks for doing that, those that have done it. My name's Patrick McCarthy. I'm the program manager for the Advancing Manufacturing Cluster Builder project. In this particular instance, though, this is the second webinar that we've run with, and I hope you can't hear that. I've told you all to turn off your microphones, and my dog is now barking in the background, so apologies for that. This is the second event that we've run with Scottish Enterprise, this one on the zero emissions heavy vehicle funding initiative, which is now live on the Scottish Enterprise website, and our speaker Terry Hogg is going to talk to you about. It's interesting that we're running this webinar at a time when I looked at the BBC news site yesterday, and there was a discussion in relation to COP26 that perhaps the UK was not doing as much as it could do in the sense of decarbonisation and support for decarbonisation initiatives. And I think the two webinars that we've done with Scottish Enterprise in support of their activities possibly suggest that that's not necessarily true when it comes to Scotland. Our two speakers today are Daniel Massinga-Grant. I'm just your amuse-bouche at the moment. You will see that there are some slides which talk about seed and the purpose of seed. I'm not going to go through those today. You will get them at the end of the presentation when Jane and Josie will send them to you. But I think this is going to be a particularly busy event, which will kick off with Daniel Massinga-Grant. When I was talking to Terry about how Seed could promote the initiative, I just happened to notice on LinkedIn that there was an article about how HVS had raised £5 million on the equity market. And this was also particularly apposite because some of you may have attended a recent Seed webinar where we looked at the application of crowdfunding for technology-based businesses and featured a local Scottish company called Crover. If anybody was on that call and hasn't caught up, Crover exceeded its ask of £150,000 and at the close had raised £277,000 on the market. So I thought that I'd invite Daniel to come along and tell us a bit about HVS and what HVS is doing in this particular sector. And he's your entree. At the end of Daniel's presentation, I've agreed that we should take 5 minutes where those who are interested in him and HVS and what they've done can put questions in the chat box, and we can address those at that point and then move on to our main course, which is Terry Hogg, who will be talking to you about the call itself. I realise I'm between you and your dinner, so I'd like to hand over now to Daniel. Daniel, thanks very much for doing this for us.
That's no problem. So thank you everybody for your time today. My name is Daniel Massinga-Grant and I'm the environmental lead at HVS. We'll go a couple of slides forward. One more. So HVS, our goal is to deliver practical zero-emission hydrogen solutions for the medium to heavy commercial vehicle sector. Next. The things that I'm going to discuss with you today, I'll introduce HVS, I'll introduce vehicles, our technology, some of our IP, and I'll follow that on by what we're looking for moving forward in this industry. So we were founded in Glasgow in 2017 and we came under new leadership in 2020. And since then we've done a significant amount of work on our vehicles and our feasibility studies. And we're kind of focused on two vehicle programs. So the first is the MCV or van, and the second is the HGV or tractor truck. And between these two, they serve the whole heavy duty sector from 5 tons up to 40 tons and eventually to the 44 ton trucks. We expect the MCV, the van platform, to be of a wider distribution of vehicle technology into both niche and specialist categories. That's like ambulances or council vehicles. And we've already just been successful in an Innovate UK grant to develop our van as an ambulance. And then the HGV will be more of a fixed use vehicle of heavy duty goods. Next slide. So as Patrick mentioned, at HVS, we've been able to secure a multi-million-pound investment in EG Group. There's this one new person on mute, that's good. We see them as an ideal investor, and they're very strategic for us. And not only have they invested widely in the wider sustainable business sector, they also complement our business strategy. There are a lot of times where we would get pushback with people talking about a chicken and egg scenario where once the refueling infrastructure is out, we'll buy the vehicles, or once the vehicles are available, we'll make the fueling infrastructure. With this strategic partner, we're able to solve both the supply and demand, because Asda has thousands of fueling stations across the UK, Europe and the world, but they also have their own fleet of 4,000 HGVs and 2,000 vans. So instead of having to coordinate two different companies or two different customers at the same time, we've got everything we need in one to get the fuel and the vehicle in place in one go. Next. The HV Systems team, we're comprised of highly experienced industry specialists who collectively cover all of the capabilities that we require to complete this project. We're able to take two of our team members, Steve Clayton and Pete Clark, who are Chief Technical Officer and our COO. They've done many projects in the past where they've taken a vehicle from a sketch on paper through to a full production vehicle. We've got an award-winning entrepreneur as a CEO with Jawad Khurshid. Dr. David Telford, who's our head of sustainability, is a nationally recognised expert in sustainability. He was the lead consultant for the Aberdeen Exhibition and Conference Centre for their combined heating and power electrolyser plant. And he's also the lead consultant for redoing the SEC's energy systems before COP26 happens. In the rest of our team, we've got a mixture of logistics, finance experience. Myself, I bring an environmental management background, and we've got expertise in infrastructure and fuel cells as well. So we cover all the areas we need to do to succeed in this project. Next. We've also got all of the kind of suppliers and subcontractors that we need. We've been doing a lot of work to find where the best components are. So we've got our kind of build partners with Hypermotive and Vital. And then we have component partners with Luxfer, who make the gas cylinders. And then we have been doing a lot of work to narrow down what is the best powertrain for us to use and what is the best fuel cell that we can get our hands on and works for the heavy duty sector. We've also been thinking about the green hydrogen and how do we get the fuel as well. So we've partnered with Green 40 Developments, and they have a system to produce green hydrogen. We've got corporate finance advisors with Turquoise, and we've been doing a lot of work alongside our now strategic partner with Eurogarages and Asda. We've been building a relationship with UPS for a long time, and as part of the ambulance project that I mentioned, we're working very closely with Scottish Ambulance Service and NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde to make sure that the vehicle we produce meets their needs in a modern healthcare vehicle. All of these end users are ready to work with us on real world trials. So kind of the areas that we're seeking support in as technologies mature is we're always looking for an indigenous UK fuel cell. There's not many available on the UK market from a UK supplier. Our goal is to make an indigenous UK vehicle. So the more suppliers we can get that are based in the UK, the better for us, because of relationship closeness, just geographically wise. but also to support the Scottish Government, the UK Government, as they've supported us through these grants. So that's what we're looking for. If anyone has any components that they think would be great for our vehicle, we'd love to hear from you. Next slide. I'll do a quick bit on why we've chosen hydrogen. So there are three key attributes that the heavy-duty vehicle sector look for. They want to be able to have heavy payloads, they want to have long range, and they want to have quick refueling times. And they have all of these three at the moment with diesel trucks. The problem is obviously we're getting more and more emissions close to climate change, but also government targets are coming in to ban the sale of new petrol and diesel vehicles. So there needs to be a shift. And we feel that battery electric vehicles are doing really well. They're exploding in the car market, and they're starting to bump up a little bit into the smaller vans. But when you get to these really heavy payloads, it doesn't quite work with the technology. But the heavy vehicle commercial applications are really good for hydrogen. They have a controlled back-to-base use with repeated duty cycles, which is great for managing the fuel cell. But it also means that the refueling network can be tactically implemented. So instead of having to put a hydrogen station everywhere we currently have a petrol station, you just need to put large hydrogen stations, but at strategic points around our major road networks. And you can cover the majority of the UK logistics needs. Or if you're working specifically with a customer, you can have a hydrogen refueling station at their depot and one at their warehouse, and the trucks can just move between, and that would cover their refueling needs. As I said before, we're also working with a partner to offer scalable green hydrogen via a carbon negative refueling system, which is implementable today and just needs to be scaled up. Next. So here's a quick glance at our two vehicle programs that we're developing. We've got our target market is the European market, and we're covering the N2 vehicle category with our medium duty chassis cabs, and we're covering the N3 vehicle category with our tractor units. Both of these we're looking to offer performance parity with existing diesel solutions. We want our end users to have minimal operational upheaval in terms of duty cycles, in terms of range, and in terms of how the drivers feel when they're using the vehicles. We are very conscious that this is a new technology, as many of you, I'm sure, are in the situation, and something new to a market needs to be as good as, if not better, than what's currently there to start making that change. And the only force that's pushing against that is obviously this government legislation coming in banning the old. We're doing a staggered vehicle development program. So the MCV, the van, we're expecting to come first to market, where we expect local authorities to be the first users, because they're a common early adopter, and the government is able to put more pressure on the councils than they can on businesses. This program for the van will be followed by the tractor truck, and which requires a slightly longer vehicle development program, but with our end users, it's demonstrating an equally strong market pool and a market desire for this product. Next slide. So we've done a lot of work so far. We've done a feasibility study, which was also funded by Innovate UK. We've completed critical investigation. We've done R&D into a lot of the following areas, including an in-depth market analysis. We've done competitive benchmarking, and we've created a simulation suite to allow us to calculate range and consumption of the fuel cell vehicles in real-world locations using geographical data. Next slide. We've got our powertrain and vehicle specifications. So our powertrain is not an off-the-shelf system. We're taking the approach employed by Apple, which means we carefully select the best technology to achieve optimum performance. Next slide. So we've done a lot of work to date to culminate in our engineering prototype mule, which was of our zero emission van. This allowed us to learn a lot of lessons from building the chassis, from looking at design, looking at a functionality assessment, and we've used the lessons that we've learned here and we've put them in for use on our demonstration vehicles. This is what they both currently look like, the van and the truck. We've gone through a lot of design iterations, and we're registering the designs for these vehicles. As you can see, that they're fairly similar. We're trying to get kind of a little brother, big brother system in place to implement circular economy principles as much as possible. We want as much crossover between the vehicles as we can to allow ease of upgrading the components and to increase the lifespan of both vehicles. Next slide. So to achieve this goals, we obviously need future funding as well. We're very happy with our successful funding round, which happened last month, and that will get us through demonstration and hopefully a little bit into prototype and production readiness. But we do need a further funding round to move towards manufacturing. To achieve this, we're pursuing both grant funding to support our development, which is becoming more and more available as the sector's requirements to decarbonise are becoming more pressing. And that's why we're here today, is to hear Scottish Enterprises' answer to those needs. Next slide. And alongside applying for those grants, we're also looking to secure further equity investment to support the longer term goals of the business. On this slide, you can see multiple recent precedents that are now showing more and more evidence that there are advances within the zero emission vehicle industry, and that once vehicle development reaches pre-production phase, there's a lot of excitement around these companies from investors and government. Nikola Motors, you can see here, they're based in the US. They're also a hydrogen truck manufacturer, and they've recently gone public and have a valuation of about £5.5 billion. Arrival is an electric van and bus maker in the UK. They've got a valuation of 11 billion now. And Rivian over at the far right there. And they're an electric Jeep electric adventure vehicle production company. And they're based in the US, but they're looking to open a European potential in the UK. And that could, if that bid is successful, they could see a £1 billion investment in them from the UK government. So there's a lot of money going towards zero emission vehicles now, which I hope it encourages those of you on the call as much as it's encouraged us. And yeah, keep doing your good work, keep pushing. Yeah, thank you for listening today. Any questions we've got in the chat, I can answer now.
Thanks very much for that, Daniel, particularly the call to arms and the motivational comments for those who might want to follow on from what you've done. There are a couple of comments and questions in the chat box, which I'll address. Anybody else who has any questions for Daniel, you might want to put your hand up, and I'm sure somebody on the C team will spot it. There's one from Steve Lally, who's head of engineering at Hill End Engineering. He's asking, are you developing a rigid 12T to 26T chassis? Now, I don't know if you addressed that during the presentation, but if not, perhaps you could answer that question for Steve at the moment.
Yep, so we've done a little bit of work around that. The reason that we're going for the tractor first is because it is a smaller area to package the components into. So it's a harder technical challenge. And once we've been able to solve any packaging or powertrain issues we have in the tractor, those will be easily translatable to a rigid truck, because there'll be more space for hydrogen storage on board. There's more space in a rigid truck. So that's the reason we've gone for the tractor first. But we have done a little bit of work on a rigid truck, and we are looking towards them in the future as well.
Okay, thanks very much for that. There's a question on funding, and I know you addressed funding, but Andrew Fraser from the Zemo partnership asked, what scale of funding does HVS perceive it will need in total to bring your first vehicle to manufacturing? So I think he's talking not just R&D, but to actually all the way through to manufacturing on the I suppose on the road.
Yeah, the next round. We think it will be at least £100 million.
Thanks very much for that. I'd asked Nigel to pick up, Nigel Holmes from the Scottish Hydrogen Fuel Cell Association. Hi, Nigel. Wasn't sure if you were coming to this. You mentioned the lack of suitable fuel cells for HGV use, and Nigel has put an answer to that in the chat box. I might ask you to unmute yourself, Nigel, and you can answer that directly if you feel able to. And Nigel, still here?
Yes, good morning, Patrick. Well, I can't answer the question directly, but what I can do is to say that there are a number of hydrogen fuel cell trucks now actually deployed and available commercially, including the Hyundai trucks, the Hyzon trucks, and the Toyota Kenworths.
Yep.
So these guys will clearly be using existing fuel cells for their product.
Okay, thanks.
I suppose maybe you slightly misheard me. I didn't say there wasn't fuel cells out there that we can use. We've found a number of partners that we can potentially use their fuel cell. It's just we were hoping that in the future, and maybe as a result of this grant funding, that there will be one produced in the UK by a UK company that we'd be able to use in the future.
Thanks for clarification, Daniel. I don't know if that answers Malcolm Douglas's question, who asked the question, who's going to supply the fuel cell and who will manufacture the engine?
The fuel cell is the engine. So the hydrogen powertrain works with a fuel cell, a battery, a DC-DC converter, and the hydrogen fuel cell tanks. So all of them kind of go together to replace the internal combustion engine. We're keeping our fuel cell provider confidential, I'm afraid. But yeah, we've got a number of options, and we've been talking with a few companies over the last year to make sure that they can meet both the duty cycle that we require, and then looking to the future, can they ramp up their production as well? Okay,
thanks very much. The chat box is filling up with questions, and I know that time is moving on, and our main course being Terry Hogg. A lot of you have come to see that, so I'll pick a couple of other questions from that and then perhaps connect you directly with those questioners so that you might want to pick up with them. So there's something from Malcolm Grimble saying, are you working with control engineering support companies, or is that through the powertrain company link?
I'm not sure what control power engineering companies would be. Is that the controls between components?
Michael, do you want to pick your microphone and ask that question directly?
Yeah, no, it was just the general control of the vehicle. You put that there's a powertrain company. I think you said it was confidential on your, and I wondered whether they were handling any control issues, the control design issues on the system.
You mean control of the vehicle or control of components?
Well, both really, I suppose.
Okay, so Hypermotive, who were on the slide, they're our powertrain partner. So they've got a lot of experience in putting fuel cells into different vehicles. So we'll be working alongside them to work out control of the system. As I said, these are all components from different manufacturers. So they've never been put together before. And that is the big challenge for us, the big place where we can get the most IP out of it, is in developing those control systems and getting those components to all work cohesively together. That's what creates this a powertrain that's not been seen before, and we hope we'll be able to deliver the needs of the HGV market.
Thank you.
So a comment from Ruan Svor at Innovus Technologies. That's why Seed's here. He's asking us to connect you. He's a hydrogen storage design manufacturer, locally based, and wants to see if the next generation Type 4 hydrogen storage products can support your development program so we'll connect you. And there is a statement from Ed Gardine, who refers to the June edition of the Institute of Measurement and Control publication and asks the question, will hydrogen measurement issues impede the rollout of hydrogen fuel? Given that the article concluded there are currently no suitable flow measurement standards for hydrogen, unless this is addressed, it's likely to be a major barrier to the widespread deployment of hydrogen. He asks, is your company involved in this?
Yes, we're well aware of that, and we are working on that.
Okay, there are other questions in the chat box. Those that ask them, if you're happy that we then forward those offline to Daniel. If we say thank you to Daniel for now, maybe we could ask them at the end of the presentation. But now I'd like to bring in Terry Hogg. Terry's the thank you, Daniel. Terry is the CANDO Innovation Manager, and he's going to tell us about the call, which I think you're all interested in finding out how you access funding. So over to you, Terry.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, as Patrick said, I'm Terry Hogg. Good morning to everyone. I am the SE's CANDO Innovation Challenge team manager, and just to provide the context, I'm going to provide an overview of the fund, but the Scotland CANDO part is probably worth just a little bit of context there. This is a Scottish Government initiative which supports entrepreneurship and innovation by bringing a collaborative approach to that. So all key agencies, public, private, third sector, coming together to support those two agendas. We've been particularly active over the last 4 years running a CANDO Innovation Challenge Fund. Some of you will be aware of it, may have engaged with it. But the essence of it is looking at policy drivers, public sector needs drivers to provide a demand-driven approach to innovation support. So that market signal, that first customer, if you like. Now that pilot program is finished, it's been successful, and we're flipping that model and experience into the net zero agenda. So working with colleagues at Scottish Enterprise, development agencies, Scottish Government, other agencies to look at how that collaborative approach can support innovation, supply chain development and the net zero agenda. So that's the context of the sort of CANDO element to it. And this call is a good example of that when we're working in partnership with Transport Scotland on this zero emissions heavy duty vehicle innovation challenge. Transport Scotland are providing the funding for it, and we're providing the delivery mechanism and the management. So I'm going to go through a few slides here, and probably the key part is to be open for the Q&A aspect of it. I'm going to actually just talk through sort of defining the challenge, look at the sort of key summary features of it. I'm going to touch on some wider innovation asset work that we're engaging with that we look to support as well. I'm focusing on some eligibility, some basic eligibility aspects of it, and then I'll take you through some basic aspects of the pretty simple, straightforward application process that we have in place. Then I'll wind up for the Q&A. So in terms of the definition, where we're pointing this, it is zero emissions heavy duty vehicles. There's a wider national programme that the SE are involved in, along with other public sector agencies, Transport Scotland and the main, that's looking at this area, and it's about how can we develop decarbonise heavy duty vehicles, but support the green economy through that as well. That programme's looking at various different segments, as you can see there, on and off-road, rail, marine and aerospace. This particular call is focused on the on and off-road segment of that the national heavy duty vehicle programme. There's a kind of rough and ready definition of that in terms of the weight. I don't want folks to feel that that's a black and white and fixed thing, but it is heavy duty. It's not looking at mass market automotive light vehicles. It is on the heavier duty side of things, and some of the applications are cited there, buses, trucks, fire engines, road critters, some construction vehicles. But if folks feel they're on the cusp of that one, it's looking at the heavier duty, more niche vehicles. But use that as a guide. But if anyone's uncertain about where they fit in that particular aspect, please feel free to get in touch with us. Next slide, please. So just in terms of what we're trying to do through this call, I suppose we're looking to, through it, it's a competitive call, so we're looking to flush out and develop a pipeline of the projects that can provide most impact into that decarbonisation of the heavy duty vehicles sector, but also contribute to the green economy in Scotland. Through the call and the evaluation, the competitive projects process, we're looking to fund the best projects, the most impactful projects, over a short 3 to 5 month period to allow them to detail designs and conduct and develop the technical and the business case for them. And again, that will allow us to create a good quality portfolio of projects that are, if they're successful through the feasibility aspect, that as are looking then to develop and demonstrate prototypes and commercialise solutions. That's at the whole vehicle solution, but also key subsystems, as I'll touch on. And through this process, through that 3 to 5 month period, we'll be looking to bring in additional support where that's going to add value and where there's a fit. But the aspect that we're looking at as well is to support the development of these good quality projects, but then work with the projects to try and help them to identify and secure additional funding to support that prototype and development phase, and not exclusively. A couple of examples was touched on previously. There's a lot of support at the UK government level in this particular area that folks will be well aware of. Through Innovate UK, through the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles, through the Advanced Propulsion Centre, for example. We also have significant, as folks will be aware, grant support for green jobs, low carbon economy here in Scotland as well. But that's the aim, is to develop the pipeline, work with the best projects with a view to the next phase, the prototype development and demonstration, and working with the portfolio of companies. Next slide, please. So yeah, just in terms of the sort of technical focus area, this is looking at zero emissions at the tailpipe, and that's looking at, I suppose, the future solutions. We well recognise that there are ways to decarbonise existing IC engines, and there's a need for that, and there's other work that's going on looking at that area. But this particular challenge is focused unashamedly on those zero emissions at the tailpipe technologies, which are largely at this point battery electric and hydrogen fuel cell, has been touched on the previous speaker. And that's, as I said before, in terms of looking at folks out there with innovations on that whole vehicle solutions, as we heard from HV Systems. There are other projects and companies in Scotland we're aware of that are developing innovative vehicle solutions. Hopefully through this call we can find some more that's out there. But as well as that, what we're looking at is folks in the supply chain that can play into the subsystem innovations. There's a real need for improvements, for cost reduction, for lightweighting, for improvements in performance, improvements in durability, circular economy aspects, to really address improvement of those subsystems in order to improve the overall vehicles. And we're really keen to flush out organisations in Scotland that are able to add value to that. I'm just touched on some of them there. We've obviously got power electronics, a key aspect in there. We've got lightweighting, which cuts across that whole vehicle and subsystem challenges. There is links on the web page for the challenge page that Patrick mentioned, and some of you have seen, and there's a link on this slide to more detail on that one. Andrew Fraser here from Seymour Partnership has conducted some really good research for us, and there's links to that which explores these challenge areas in a bit more detail. And we've also provided links to the Advanced Propulsion Centre's technology roadmaps, which provide real granularity in terms of the detailed component subsystem challenges within those areas. So I'd urge you, if you're not already aware of them, to look into that level of detail to understand if you've got something ready-made to address, great, but you may find some ideas and some benefit from the intelligence that we're providing access to. Next slide, please. So just the overall aspects of the call then, just to sort of highlight some of it I touched on there. So yeah, this call is all about supporting Scottish businesses to develop innovative solutions that can move forward and help to roll out heavy-duty vehicle, zero-emission heavy-duty vehicles, but also that dual aspect of net zero, but driving that Scottish green economy. It's funded by Transport Scotland and managed by ourselves, but that partnership, that's the reason for that Can Do Innovation Challenge call. It's that partnership approach to solving net zero and driving economic development through innovation and supply chain development. And that's important because this is open to any eligible business in Scotland. The previous Green Jobs Fund, just by the structural nature of it, it was structured for Scottish enterprise area companies only. This is available to everyone in Scotland. It's 100% funding. That's pretty unusual. We've got this coming through de minimis. We want to get projects that need funding and can benefit from it, obviously, but we want to reduce the barriers here. We want to find the best projects. So we've made a call to fund these small projects 100% through the de minimis grant scheme. And it is about R&D feasibility. And we're on a tight timeline here. We've got a 3 to 5 month period to conduct the feasibility and complete the feasibility projects ending this financial year, ending March 2022. And the range of projects, we're looking at 30k to 50k over that 3 to 5 months. So following successful feasibility projects, obviously, you need to be seriously considering the development and demonstration of prototypes. I say this is almost a means to an end to help identify, flush out and support good quality projects with a view to that next stage prototype development and demonstration and subsequent commercialisation. And again, I highlight to be looking for whole vehicle innovative solutions, but the subsystems are really important for us as well. And again, not that it's a requirement, but if there's value in it, we'll be looking to engage the wider support team and assets to support folks with developing consortia, identifying early customers, potential markets, and actually looking at where there might be funds with insights from ourselves and partners. And also we've got teams in SE who are well experienced in supporting folks to apply for funding as well. So there's a wider package of support that's going to be offered to companies too. Next slide, please. So yeah, that wider support asset, these are just examples here, but what we're looking to do, what we've already done actually through this early phase of the call is, I think we're pretty blessed in Scotland with a rich support ecosystem, and these logos here are all organisations who have got direct relevance to this HDV sector and this call that we are looking and we have engaged with, but as part of this process we're looking to bring them into the project portfolio, see where they can offer value to projects, and actually through it as well get to a point where we understand each other a bit better and get to a point where we can offer a more sort of cohesive and integrated Scottish offering. But for you, the project participants, I would encourage you to Google the logos and engage with those organisations if you're not already aware of them. Can offer a lot of help and support. I just mentioned a few of them. We've got one of the key assets for us, flagship assets, is our Michelin Scotland Innovation Park up in Dundee, able to offer it's got a sustainable mobility focus. It's got a great accelerator program that's up and running. Obviously, space up in Dundee and relevant to the call and the collection and cluster of companies developing in there. And in terms of expertise and access to expertise, again, we're kind of blessed with the Energy Technology Partnership, a single route into all the key academic expertise in this area. I know Alex Reed's on the call has got a particular focus on the sustainable mobility side of things, so you can almost short circuit and get a direct route into there. They've also got additional funding streams that can support that work as well. On the hydrogen side, we've got a new hydrogen accelerator there, and also at St Andrews, we've got some real world-class, world-leading capability in hydrogen fuel cell electrochemistry, and up at the Eden campus, developing a really fantastic facility there. So key thing is you've got access into some real key expertise. We've got folks at DER Scotland based in Strathclyde, access into the Driving the Electric Revolution programme at UK level, so that expertise but also knowledge of the funding streams that's coming up. And just by way of example, on the right hand side there, we've got a few sort of key test and demonstration facilities. We've got our Energy Technology Centre out in East Kilbride, used to be actually the UK's automotive and engine test facility. It's been repurposed to look at low carbon, but there's some real key facilities there. There's rolling road facilities, engine drivetrain test facilities, sort of sub-megawatt, but some real relevant automotive expertise and R&D expertise around that facility as well. We've got our folks at Strathclyde on the Power Networks Demonstration Centre out in Cumbernauld, again, world-leading capability and expertise and physical facilities that can help develop, demonstrate and test electrical systems in relation to the HDV challenge, and in development locate facility, a sort of larger drivetrain test facility that's going to be located on the innovation park. These are just examples. There's a whole host of others. We've got Nigel and the Scottish Hydrogen Fuel Cell Association. We've got Seed and the Cluster Builders. We've got a Sustainable Mobility Cluster Builders. So there's a whole host of support that's available, and through this call what we'll be looking to do is to engage with companies and identify where the assets can best support them. Next slide, please. So just in terms of the basic eligibility aspects, I've touched on some of this, so apologies, a wee bit repetition, but we are only looking at R&D feasibility projects here that can clearly address the challenge brief. So there's full information within the challenge page. Please make sure your project is addressing the key elements of that. Yeah, it sounds pretty obvious, but you must be looking to develop and commercialise innovative technologies through this R&D project. We're looking at companies who are looking to develop technology and commercialise it, directly or through partners. I'm not saying this isn't important. We are looking at this area, but this is not to support companies who are looking to decarbonise their own fleets and not necessarily commercialise technology. This is about technology development and commercialisation, albeit it's just that feasibility phase. And again, short project, 3 to 5 months duration, 30 to 50k in scale, 100% funded, but everything needs to be complete and invoiced by end of March. So it's tight, doable, but it's a very tight and slick process we've got underway here. In terms of business eligibility, again, the can-do aspect, any business in Scotland, you've got to be registered in Companies House, committed to fair work principles. So we've seen that within the green jobs. That's fair wage, £9.50 an hour, and it's single applicant. We are limited in terms of the grant-based mechanism that we've got set up. Is it's one applicant and one contract with that applicant. If there's other folks that's required, they need to come in as a supplier. Eligible project costs is pretty much what you see in most R&D and probably maps onto those familiar with the SMART funding calls. So your usual internal costs, it's employee wages, your contractor costs, consultant costs, suppliers, materials, travel. So most things are in there that you would expect to see with an R&D. And again, there's linked to more detail on that within the challenge space. Important to highlight is though we are adopting the SMART principle, and it's about speed of processing as well, but there will be a requirement to provide an independent accounting report to validate spend. That's pretty part and parcel of the SMART process. That is a cost that's eligible, and you're probably looking at sort of £500 to £1,000 typically. It depends on the complexity of your project and I suppose the price of your accountant as well. But that's an element that's worth flagging that folks need to consider and build into the proposals as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of the application process, it's a very, very short, simple application process. It's a short, simple exercise we're conducting, so we're not going overboard with the admin side of things. We've got the basic sort of contact details as you would expect, the need for funding aspects, but the bits that we will be assessing, the bits where you will be judged and the relative strengths will be assessed are laid out there. That's the application sections and the evaluation criteria. So just quickly whistling through them. We've got the project proposal where you're going to describe what you're doing. Again, that's make sure you've got that fit with the challenge brief. We're looking at the impact of the projects as you would expect. So we're looking at Scottish jobs, Scottish turnover in your business. The innovation aspects describe how it's different. What novelty you're introducing here. What competitive advantage can you get? What we're looking at is what's the potential. How leading is this, and how much of a proposition can you build on that innovation, which links into a separate criteria of commercial potential. We're looking at the scale of that market opportunity, but also the quality of the proposal, your ability to provide a strong value proposition. How viable are your potential routes to market? Notwithstanding, a lot of this is unknown, but there is a an ask and an opportunity for you to explain and convince us that you've thought about this, and there is, you've got one eye on this commercial side of it. Yeah, business and team resources, you would expect that. We really just want to see that you've got a quality team, or you're bringing others in to address any gaps that you have. And yeah, we're looking at, albeit it's a feasibility project, but we are looking to see, how well do you plan projects? What's the robustness of the plan? Do you understand risk and risk management? Basic stuff that you would see with the most R&D applications. And then on the feasibility project cost, really just want to see the detail. So make it clear, justify the costs, and we'll be looking at, what's the kind of value for money there. So that's the key elements that we're going to be assessing the applications on. It's a short application process. We're limited in terms of text that you can provide. So no apologies about that. We don't want War and Peace. You need to be short, sharp in terms of your application process, but also on the valuation side, we want to be quick and sharp with this as well. Next slide, please. So just in terms of next steps, well, if you've not already done it, I suspect some have, but I'd encourage you to view the website links there, look through the details, look through the challenge and the further details provided through the sources I mentioned there. Yeah, download. It's a simple download PDF document. Complete the fields. Once you're happy with it, send it in. Don't wait to the last minute if you don't have to, but experience has shown that tends to be the case. And it's a simple email into the email address there. Also, we feel that please spend time looking at the website first rather than dropping the inquiry line a question that's already answered through the detail. Apologies if that sounds patronising, but there is quite a lot of information there. But if for whatever reason you have a query, we've got an inquiry line set up. If you send it into there and obviously mark it from the heavy duty vehicle side of things, we've got a team that's responding to them in the first instance, and then it'll be brought into a sort of second line team that would follow up with you directly. And I'll just finish there with the timeline in the next slide, please. So yeah, we're open. We've been open for a couple of weeks now. Tight time scales relatively, but it's a short process. You just under 6.5 weeks to get your applications in. We'll be turning that around pretty quickly, notifying you there mid-October. Looking to get contracts issued by end of October, and earliest project start date 1st of November. Please, it's kind of obvious, but please, you cannot start your project without a signed contract. That would kind of nullify your bid, I'm afraid. And we need to have projects finished, invoiced, along with the supporting evidence by end of March. We're on the cautious kind of public sector budgetary timescale, but it's good for us as well. We want to build that pipeline, get the R&D finished this year, and get ourselves in a good position to be working with a portfolio of companies next financial year on bigger and better projects, if you like. And that's me, Patrick, so I'll open it up for questions if that's okay.
Well, thank you much, Terry, for a really informative presentation again. I'm quite surprised, actually. Everybody's been quite modest in terms of there's a lot of information where people have shared their intent to offer services or ability to offer services, not too many questions. So not too late to ask those questions of Terry. I expected there will be some about process. Just briefly go through. I do have a couple relating from what is on the in the chat box. So Jason from Denchi has commented that if anybody's interested in the battery technology that Denchi has to offer, to get in touch. Nick from Logan Energy is talking about hydrogen production refueling, and he's keen to connect with anyone developing components or projects. So that led me to think that I had seen when we first posted this as an event that you had talked about single applicants only. And you have addressed this, I know, but you use the term supplier. So anybody who's never previously applied for a grant of this nature, could you define what a supplier is and what that means relative to the actual applicant themselves?
Yeah, sure, Patrick. It's just a feature of our grant funds. I mean, I suppose comparing it with Innovate UK have a scheme where you can apply for collaborative funds. So you effectively have within one project, you have multiple entities receiving grants. This is not like that. This is a a single applicant, a single business would apply for the grant and receive the grant. But we're well aware that those, some of those external expertise inputs that's required would be provided to the project, but as a supplier, so a supplier of services. So you would build the partners, if you like, in and their costs in as suppliers rather than grant recipients. So you would receive the 100% grant, and you would then be responsible for engaging and contracting with your partners as suppliers. So hopefully that's clear.
Thanks for that, Terry. So follow on to that is with the issue of VAT. So if somebody is one company supplying to another company, presumably they'll have to charge VAT. How does the recipient deal with that when it comes to making the grant?
Yeah, well, that's a dead easy one. As you'd imagine, that the grant supports your costs. So if you are recovering VAT, then you would recover your VAT at the normal ways you would in a business. You wouldn't expect grant monies to cover the VAT costs there, given that you're going to be getting it back anyway. Patrick, so it's basically 100% of the kind of net costs if you're recovering the VAT.
Thanks for that, Terry. I thought I would nevertheless ask it. There is a question for Ruan again. He's asking, how many projects do you think you'll fund using this call this round? I'll add that suffix.
Yeah, well, I suppose it depends on the quality and volume is the honest answer, but we've probably got a ceiling of about 10 to 12, I think, is the kind of our maximum estimation. But hopefully we'll get to that. But as I say, if we don't find the enough projects that meet the quality threshold, then it'll be less than that.
Okay, thanks. I see that Maria's put the link to the challenge in, which is good. There's another question from Paul. He's saying, thanks very much, great overview. Could there be a collaboration with a larger value if we break down the demonstration into work packages between collaborators? Again, Paul, you might want to clarify what you mean by that, if that's not clear from the question, as you understand it, Terry.
Possibly not.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can't.
I was just. Hi there, Terry. Yeah, we've got a couple of options where we're Fluxart, we're a spin out from Strathclyde, but we can't do all of what we want within our scope of work. But we know that there are other partners that are in Scotland that might be compatible with what we want to do as a full demonstrator. So if we all went independently to put work packages forward to you that would then integrate, would you be able to accept something like that? So
just to be clear, Paul, this is about a feasibility project. So this is about providing some support to allow you to detail design, build business and technical cases, and it is constrained to that 3 to 5 months, 30 to 50k. If you are looking at a subsequently then a bigger demonstrator project, that's exactly what we're trying to do here. We're trying to provide a small amount of resource to you to develop effectively develop the case where you can convince yourself and others that they can then invest in prototype and demo. So just to be clear, this is about the feasibility stage. We are then hoping to work with the winning companies, if they're up for it, to then look at how we then lever in if the feasibility is successful and folks believe there is a technical and business case for investment, to then look at the subsequent prototype and demonstration phase. But this initial part is only for the feasibility, which would include the sort of detailed design and business case element. So hopefully that maybe
understanding
clarifies that.
It does, it does clarify what does come of what we're trying to do. Is it's a systems architecture that we're trying to develop that requires many components to come together. Yep. And so I already know that there's one of the companies that I'd like to talk to here in this call about their tank and storage, just to go with our motor and drive combination. And so when you're designing a system, you need to have all the components of these together. And so the idea would be maybe multiple business cases align, if that makes sense.
It possibly would, but yeah, for this you would need to come in as if you're developing the overall system, you leading it, and then those subsystem suppliers coming in either free gratis or as suppliers to that right. project. But it would be limited to the 3 to 5 months, 50k. So we're not kidding ourselves on that you're going to do the whole thing. It's really just get enough detail, get enough confidence that there's something there that then would be the basis upon which you'd be applying for larger funds, Paul.
Brilliant. Thank you, Terry. That's really clear.
Thank you, Paul. So there are some more questions coming in. There's one from Roland. Roland's at Scottish Forestry, and he's asked, could a project be as simple as developing vehicle specifications and duty cycles for HGVs in a specific sector?
Yeah, that's I spoke with Roland before actually on this one. So hello, Roland. Thanks for joining us. What we're looking at with this call. So I don't think so is the honest answer. What we're looking at is developing innovative technology. So if there was someone behind that application who had one eye on an innovative solution to that forestry application, zero emissions, then that would be fine. But if what you're looking to do is to develop a specification for the forestry industry to then adopt and apply, that isn't something that we're looking at. I mentioned that previously. We're not, this isn't funding feasibility to help fleets to decarbonise. That's not saying that that's not important, and I think increasingly we're seeing a real need to do that. But this is looking at who has innovative technology ideas that can address the decarbonisation, but also have an intent to develop, demonstrate and commercialise the technology behind it. So hopefully that maybe helps. And if not, Roland, I'm more than happy to pick up on the specifics if that helps.
Thanks, Terry. There's one here from Stephen Turner. I don't know how you pronounce your company. Is it Kaigan? And I think you may already have answered it, but he's saying, are partnerships projects with EU-based companies eligible? I suppose the question there is, if they came in as a supplier, could the business that receives the grant use that grant to pay their costs?
Technically, yes. I mean, I think there's got to be a proportionality aspect that you would look at as well. It needs to be the company applying needs to be the one that's developing the value and realising the value. But if there's suppliers from non-Scottish companies, that's pretty standard, yeah.
Okay, thank you. One from Simon, which is simply asking for a number. How much money's in the pot?
That's an easy one, 500,000.
Thanks very much. One from Daniel Cuttin here. Any specific guidance or limitations around technology or manufacturing readiness levels? Which I don't think you did address. You did, Miss Daniel. I don't think Terry did address that.
No, I didn't. It's a really good question, Dan. I mean, I'm going to sit in the fence a little bit because I don't really know exactly. But what we're looking to do is after this project has been a position where folks can start prototype, so maybe a bit more detailed design, but certainly be looking at prototype development demonstration within the next year, 2-3 year period. Business timeframes. We're not looking at blue sky research the next 5-10 years. These are about business-led projects within those timelines for developing and demonstrating prototypes. So, we'd be looking within those sort of 2-3 year periods to be getting down to that sort of higher TRL level, the 7, 8s, 9s. So it's unlikely to be at the 0-1 just now, the 2. It's likely to be stuff that's a bit more developed. So less blue sky research, more feasibility that can quickly lead to prototype development demonstration. So if I've sat on the fence a little bit there, Patrick, but hopefully that's okay. And Dan, I can pick up with you in detail on that one.
I don't think Daniel will necessarily mind, because having asked the question, I noticed he may have just dropped off the call. So at least you'll get the presentation and the recording, and you can do that. There's one from Daniel, our speaker, previously that we talked about when discussing the presentations. Is it that you'll only work with companies who have completed the feasibility studies at the next stage? So if a company doesn't apply for feasibility funding, will it be excluded from the next round of funding that's available for bigger things?
Yeah, it's a good question. So this is a discrete fund, so there is no direct connection between this fund and any other fund. That's the first thing to say. So what we're looking to do is, in all honesty, we've got a good idea of projects, but this is a little bit of a fishing exercise to see what's in Scotland, what value we've got, to flush it out, to work with it, and then to engage and identify other funds. So if within that, and this is the best case scenario, we identify, a portfolio of projects that we fund, but a portfolio of projects that didn't meet the funding rate, but that are good quality projects. We would, subject to having resources, and don't want to overcommit here, but we would be looking to work with anyone who had projects of value and tap them into, other bits of SE support that could help them apply for other funding. So we're using this as a way of developing a knowledge of who's out there. So this isn't an exclusive thing, but obviously there's a finite pot of money for this call, which I mentioned earlier. There is a finite number of people in the organisation to then support projects. So, we will be favouring the folks who succeed in this, but it's not an exclusive thing, Patrick. And categorically, this 500,000 is not linked to any other pot of money. So that any other pots that we have through Scottish Enterprise, things like Green Jobs or come out of Innovate UK or anywhere else, will be competitive and will be open for anyone. So there'll be no advantage other than having a little bit more work done on them for the projects that are successful in this phase.
I can see in the background Nigel Holmes answering some of the questions directly, and support perhaps coming through Shefka for those questioners. Mark, there's Mark Fulton. I don't understand the question in the chat box, so therefore I don't think I can ask it correctly. Do you want to unmute and ask Terry what you mean by this? It seems to say program versus project business case, I think, is the issue.
Yes. The question was asked whether or not people can collaborate to do big stuff, and it's to do with. My comment is, at a program level, what you're looking to do is orchestrate a number of projects together for a big purpose. Whereas I think what we're looking to here is at the other end of the market, where it's to stimulate activity at supply chain level to get stuff done. So I actually answered inadvertently the wrong question, but that was the comment.
Okay, no, thank you for that. There's a question. There aren't that many left, actually. So nearing the end of this, unless people want to add some more to the chat box. I think we've answered this already from Malcolm Douglas. Do you want an actual prototype built or just the feasibility? I'll let you rehearse that, Terry.
Yeah, I mean, this is to support the feasibility funding of it. If for whatever reason you could develop a prototype within that funding with that phase, then all power to your elbow. But this is realistically looking at supporting that feasibility phase. So there's no requirement to develop a prototype at that stage. What we'll be looking to is, as I said before, is to build the case that could help secure the necessary funds, the significant funds that's probably required to develop and prototype the technologies that come out of this.
There is a question within a comment from Malcolm Grimble, who's the Technical Director for Industrial Systems and Controls Limited. He asked about how he gets the presentation in PowerPoint. Well, we'll send that out to everybody that attends this presentation. That will come out in a few days' time after we've prepared the video. But the question in there is there as much interest in battery power for small goods vehicles as there is for hydrogen? I don't know who that question is best directed at. There are probably people on this call that might want to jump in and answer that. Terry, what do you think? That one for somebody else?
I'm out my depth in terms of the relative expertise that's on this call. So all I would say is that they can probably state in the obvious that there's, in terms of the battery electric versus hydrogen, there's certainly, and I'm going out with HV, the battery electric market is probably more extensive. There's more, examples of commercial units, but, ultimately hydrogen has got its place, and, looks like, in many applications, particularly in heavy duty, there is a crossover point where current technologies are suggesting batteries are struggling, and hydrogen has many advantages over and above stating those kind of, relatively obvious things. Patrick will probably let others that have got know more about what they're talking about come in on that.
So there's a chance now for somebody to come in. I think somebody nearly did before I interrupted them. If you identify yourself when you do, is that Daniel coming in?
Yeah, you pretty much got it, Terry. We've seen the explosion of electric cars that are on the roads now. I think I see a Tesla every time I go out now, and they're everywhere. And it's not a massive leap from a large car to a small van. So battery electric is working there. Of course, we've got to get all the charging infrastructure out, or charging places at work. So when it goes to commercial places, charging a lot of vans in the same place at the one time can be difficult. But that's just something we've got to manage as we go into the future. But as you said, Terry, for hydrogen, there is a kind of a point where, as you go up into the heavy duty vehicles, where hydrogen becomes more useful for what we're looking for in the future, and kind of continuing what we use in transport currently. So yeah, we expect to see hydrogen everywhere in the future. You know, we've got the Toyota Mirai, the Honda Clarity at the car level. We've got people doing retrofits for vans for hydrogen. So we do expect hydrogen to trickle down as well into the smaller ones. So there's absolutely space for both of those technologies in our future transport world. And then we see hydrogen majority top end, battery majority smaller end, but a lot of mixing overall.
Good.
Thanks for that. That's about it in terms of questions. There are an awful lot of offers, which is why Seed exists, to bring people together. I'll talk to Josie and to Jane, who we should say thank you to for running the presentation so smoothly, and see what we can do in terms of what information you get. Otherwise, I'll drop everybody an email linking those people who have offered their services. There's one just come in, for example, from Ryan Robinson, saying if anyone wants to charge their heavier vehicle publicly, they can use the charging point at the East Lothian Council Waterford Park, for example. So if everybody who has put something in the chat box offering services is happy for me to share their email addresses, I'll put a note together to everybody who attended, offering those services and comments. But with no more questions left in the chat box, unless there are a few more questions for Daniel, as there were at the beginning. Anybody who didn't have a question for Daniel maybe will want to leave, but I could perhaps go back to those original ones for Daniel if you've got time still, Daniel, and we can look at the ones we didn't do. So thank you everybody else that attended the presentation, and perhaps we'll look forward to the next Seed event,